For my final project in cinema history, I'll be covering the evolution of the Western genre. From the earliest Western film, The Great Train Robbery 1903, to more recent films such as The Sisters Brothers 2018, there have been many changes and innovations not only in the technology but storytelling as well. At its core, though, Westerns tell of a rough, hard time where men and women fought, loved, and died for freedom and the pursuit of happiness. Often lone wolf types, you see the main characters have a sense of purpose and community when faced with disparity and evil. Social norms have had quite the change on westerns, bringing about changes in both the vocabulary and stories being told. But overall, I'd say westerns remain the same at their core, grand tales of a different time, of conflicts and lawlessness, just men striving to make it in an unjust world.
The first Western film was The Great Train Robbery. Released in 1903, it was written, produced, and directed by Edwin S. Porter. A former Edison Studios cameraman, Edwin used a number of unconventional techniques at the time, including frequent camera movement, on-location shooting, and even composite editing. In the final shot of the film, the leader of the outlaw band points his gun directly at the camera and shoots point blank at the audience. It's said that this sequence may have inspired the gun barrel opening sequence from the James Bond series. The Great Train Robbery inspired many imitators trying to capture its success. The Bold Bank Robbery 1904, The Holdup of the Rocky Mountain Express 1906, and The Life of an American Cowboy 1906 are some of the few that came out over a couple years following its release. The 1910s and 20s saw a boom in silent westerns, often portraying the good guys in white suits and clean-shaven, and the outlaws wearing dark clothing and mustached. During this time, D.W. Griffith released his epic The Birth of a Nation in 1915, following two families through the Civil War and aftermath, including Lincoln's assassination and the rise of the KKK. To this day, it is one of the most controversial films to be ever made in the United States. It was also the first 12-reel film ever made and was the longest film to be made yet, at a 195-minute runtime. Director John Ford flourished in the early eras of westerns, making over 60 silent films between 1917 and 1928. In 1924, he directed The Iron Horse, a historical drama covering the building of the first transcontinental railroad. The film, after overcoming many obstacles, ended up becoming one of the top-grossing films of the decade. The coming of sound to westerns happened in 1929 with Irving Cummings in Old Arizona. It was not only the first major western to use sound, but also the first talkie to be filmed outdoors. And Old Arizona also set the stereotype of the singing cowboy, as one of its stars, Warner Baxter, sings in it as he moseys along. After sound was introduced, westerns surged in popularity, introducing noises such as wagons creaking, gunshots, and horses clomping through the open fields. Sounds helped immerse the audience in the experience of the Wild West. 1939 saw John Wayne instated as the face of the West, thanks to John Ford's film Stagecoach. Due to the success of the film, John Wayne became one of the biggest stars in westerns. It is recognized as an important work that transcends the western genre, thanks to its collectivism viewpoint rather than merely individuals as portrayed in previous westerns. The late 40s and 50s saw the Cold War influence in westerns, polar opposite to Stagecoach, where collectivism was portrayed as evil and individualism were portrayed as freedom, and lone wolf heroes fighting gangs of bullies became shining examples of virtue. Spaghetti westerns came next, western films directed and produced by Italians. Filmed in Spain and Germany, critics termed them spaghetti westerns because they thought they were inferior to American westerns. Sergio Leone's A Fistful of Dollars, 1964, was enormously successful and brought the subgenre to the limelight. Ennio Morricone composed the scores to the majority of Leone's films and a multitude of spaghetti westerns besides, and his use of a whistle, cracking whips, and gunshots in his scores was seen as visionary. Followed by A Few Dollars More in 1965 and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in 1966, the Dollars trilogy remains some of the most influential and successful westerns to this day. The age of space was upon the United States, and westerns died down in popularity for a while, as movie watchers were more interested in the future and less in the tales of the past in the Wild West. After the moon landing in 1969 and the buzz of the space race had died down, Ned Kelly, 1970, saw a different kind of western in its portrayal of Australian outlaws. Two Mules for Sister Sarah, 1970, had Clint Eastwood playing a cowboy during the French intervention in Mexico. Mel Brooks released Blazing Saddles in 1974, a satirical western that also calls out the racism obscured by Hollywood's previous accounts of the Wild West, and Mel pulls no punches with making the hero a black sheriff in an all-white town. The 1980s was a dark time to the genre, with no notable films being released after the disappointment that was Heaven's Gate in 1980. Kevin Costner's Dances with Wolves in 1990 saw the light at the end of the 80s dark tunnel, winning the Academy Award for Best Picture. The era of revisionist westerns wouldn't be revived until Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven in 1992 came out, speaking harsh truths against Hollywood's romanticism of violence and their portrayal of westerns and drawing from his own personal experiences in westerns and life. It was nominated for 9 Academy Awards and ended up with 4 wins for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Film Editing. Unforgiven opened the door for not only a revival of westerns, but for revisionists as well, allowing Tombstone, 1993, and Wyatt Earp, 1994, to tell the story of the famed gunslinger and lawman Wyatt Earp, and Wild Bill, in 1995, to tell the story of legendary lawman Wild Bill Hickok. Both famed and esteemed characters of the Wild West, the modernized portrayal of them drew back an interest of the Wild West in times past, as they were based more upon their real actions than the tall tale characters they were portrayed as previously. The Quick and the Dead in 1995 introduced women as protagonists in the Wild West, a previously male-led field. Played by Sharon Stone, the film showed that women could be gunslingers and make it on their own as well in the rough and tumble times. The early 2000s was a mixed bag when it came to the genre, with comedic films such as Shanghai Noon in 2000, Western characters traveling the world and racing horses in 2004's Hidalgo, a remake of Ned Kelly in 2003 with the Australian Outlaws and their effect halfway across the world from the American Wild West, 310 to Yuma in 2007 showing that outlaws could have honor as well, and then a neo-western in No Country for Old Men 2007 with a modernized portrayal of classic Western elements. Western films have continued to evolve and remain mainstream even in the 2010s. Quentin Tarantino's Django Unchained in 2012 shows revenge of a former slave against his masters, and his 2015 Hateful Eight pays homage to Sergio Leone and spaghetti westerns in every aspect. One of the most recent movies of the genre to come out, The Sisters Brothers, in 2018, tells a tale of gunfighter brothers acting as assassins for a wealthy businessman. While it wasn't as successful in theaters, it is a great modern western that follows the genre's previous successes while offering new wit and a relatable cast of main characters. In conclusion, the western genre has gone through many stages, over a century worth of growth and setbacks, but at its core remains the same to this day. All Down But Nine was a western saying relating to bowling. Yes, there was bowling in the Wild West, but sums up the genre perfectly. Even when shortcomings happen, a western is still a western, and if you're in the game and playing, you're still winning. I hope that the genre continues to thrive and be relevant in the future of the film industry.